I noticed the anomaly on the 43rd day of the rotation. That is the part I find most useful to say at the start, because it puts a frame around what followed. 43 days of routine, 43 days of instrument checks and meal logs and the low hum of Velen 9's corridor ventilation, and not once in that span had I looked twice at the behavioral manifest for the station's human security assignment. Why would I? Sergeant Davin Os had been, to every outward measure, exactly what the rotation brief described: cooperative, professional, quiet. He kept to his quarters during the posted rest cycles, or so I had assumed. He filed his inspection reports without errors or omissions. He ate at regular intervals. He said very little. It was Technician Pravith who flagged it, and only because she was auditing the life support consumption logs for a different report entirely. "Researcher Mavar," she said, appearing in the doorway of the monitoring room with a data slate held at an angle that suggested she was not sure how to present it. "The rest cycle register for the human unit shows no confirmed sleep signature since day 31. I looked at the date on the station clock. It was day 43. "Check the sensor calibration," I said. She had already checked it. I asked her to check it again. It was not a calibration error. I pulled the archive myself. That is how I can describe what followed. 3 of us sitting in the monitoring room at Velen 9, reviewing 91 hours of continuous station footage, looking for the part where Sergeant Osa had slept. We did not find it. What we found instead was a record of sustained, methodical, apparently effortless occupation. 91 hours of a human being in motion. The first 12 hours were unremarkable. Osai completed his scheduled rounds, logged his reports, spent an hour in the station's small exercise corridor. Standard activity. Nothing that would have drawn a second glance. Then the rest cycle began, the standard Velen 9 quiet period, during which all non-essential personnel were expected to take their minimum biological recovery interval. Osai did not sleep. He went to Cargo Bay 3. I will try to describe what the footage showed with the same clinical remove I have tried to apply to everything else in this account, though I will acknowledge that my notes from the review session are somewhat less orderly than my notes usually are. He reorganized it. That is the simple answer. Cargo Bay 3 had been loaded in the standard packing schema used by the Velen 9 resupply division, which is not an efficient schema. It prioritizes volume over access, and it had been a minor operational friction point for the station staff since the last resupply drop. Os apparently identified this, because he spent the first 4 hours of his non-sleep period systematically removing every container from the bay, reclassifying them by access frequency and operational category, and repacking them in an arrangement that one of my technicians later calculated would reduce retrieval time by approximately 40%. He worked without stopping, without consulting a plan as far as I could determine. He appeared to be solving the problem in real time, carrying containers, reading labels, making decisions. When he finished, he cleaned the bay floor. Then he went to the maintenance log terminal and spent 3 hours rewriting the station's quarterly inspection schedule. I want to be precise about the timeline here, because the timeline is the point. By the time Osai finished the maintenance schedule revision, he had been awake for 27 hours. I know what 27 hours of sleep deprivation looks like in a Verath-class researcher. I have seen it in the field. The cognitive degradation becomes measurable at 16 hours. At 24, decision-making is impaired to the degree that we consider it a medical threshold. A junior technician in that state would not be permitted to operate equipment. Osai's revised maintenance schedule contained no errors. I checked it against the station's operational parameters myself. He spent the next period running fitness drills in the exercise corridor. Not light drills, the kind of drills that the human military preparation literature, which I had reviewed before the rotation began, classifies as high exertion. He did this for 2 hours. Then he showered and went to the commissary and ate a meal and sat at a table for approximately 20 minutes, reading something on a personal device, and his biometric trace showed a heart rate that had returned to resting baseline. Then he went back to work. I will not narrate every hour. The record speaks. Over the following 2 days, OSI audited the station's emergency equipment stores, found 3 items listed as in service that were past their certified replacement date, submitted a corrective requisition, and then, because the requisition would take 11 days to process, fabricated interim replacements from parts in the maintenance locker. He wrote the fabrication procedure down in the station log, with enough detail that any other crew member could replicate it. He also repaired the ventilation coupling in Corridor 7, which had been producing a low intermittent hum for, according to the maintenance log, 4 months. No one had fixed it. OSI fixed it in 40 minutes on what was, by then, his 78th consecutive waking hour. I went to find him on hour 91. I had sat with the footage long enough. I needed to look at him directly. He was in the equipment storage room, standing at a workbench under a row of overhead panel lights, with a disassembled sensor casing in front of him and a small tool in his right hand. I stood in the doorway for a moment before announcing myself. I wanted to observe him the way I had been observing him through the archive footage, without the variable of being observed back. He was working with the same quality of attention I had seen across 91 hours of recording, not hurried, not distracted, not performing focus for an audience, just present, just doing the thing in front of him as though it were the only thing in the world. I have reviewed a great deal of footage of a great many species under operational conditions. I am not sure I have a word for what I was watching. He looked up when I entered. He did not appear startled. He did not appear anything in particular. He looked the way he always looked, composed, slightly unhurried, as though he had all the time he needed and had never once doubted that this was true. I said, "Sergeant Osei." He said, "Researcher Mavar." The way he said it was polite, attentive even. I asked him when he had last slept. He considered this, not in a way that suggested the answer was troubling him, more the way a person considers a question that is slightly less interesting than the one they had expected. "Day 31, I think," he said. "Maybe 30, I'd have to check the log." He set the small tool down on the workbench. "Is there a problem with one of my reports?" I told him there was not. "Okay," he said. He picked the tool back up. I asked him how he felt. He thought about this with the same mild, unhurried consideration. "A little tired," he said. "I was going to sleep after I finished this." A little tired, 91 hours, a little tired. I filed my report the following morning. It was not an especially long report. I'm a monitoring researcher, not a xenobiologist, and I tried to stay within the boundaries of what I had actually observed rather than speculate beyond them. The report described the anomaly, the archive review, and the results. It noted that Sergeant Osei's work output during the 91-hour period exceeded the projected output of a standard 2-person crew operating on a normal rest schedule. It noted that his error rate across all completed tasks, all of them, cargo logistics and schedule revision and equipment repair and everything else, was 0. I recorded his biometrics from the final hours of the period and appended them to the report without comment, because I did not have adequate comment. His cognitive indicators showed mild fatigue suppression. His reaction time was within normal parameters for a rested adult human. His cortisol profile was elevated in a pattern consistent with, and I am quoting the comparison literature here, moderate voluntary exertion. Moderate voluntary exertion. The report's final line took me a while to write. I drafted several versions of it. I eventually settled on what I thought was the most accurate statement I could make within the scope of my evidence, which is this. In a species where the biological floor of functional impairment, the threshold below which an individual cannot be said to be performing at capacity, sits at a deprivation level that constitutes a medical emergency for every other sentient species I am aware of. The question of what the ceiling looks like is one I do not feel qualified to answer. I submitted the report. I sent a copy to the Velen 9 station director and a copy to the cooperative's Xenobiological Assessment Division. Then I went asleep. I was very tired. I do not know what else I did that night. I did not check the footage. I thought it was better, on balance, not to know.